Hi, my name is Kim Suyeon. Today I will give a brief introduction to Audre Lorde. I will talk about her life, her works, and the social atmosphere of the time she was active as a poet and an activist. Before beginning, as you can see from the title, Audre Lorde is most often and best described as Black lesbian feminist warrior, poet, and mother. However, as her partner, Gloria Joseph says, however accurate these words may be, we know that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and so being Audre Lorde cannot be defined by a list of words. Audre Lorde was born in 1934 as the first generation American and a third daughter out of three. A bit of fun fact, Audre was named with an Y in the end, but she decided to remove it for the sake of aesthetics. Her parents were not American but Caribbean. Her mother came from Grenada and father from Barbados. Her parents moved from the Caribbean to Harlem, New York for the purpose of money. The year that they moved, 1924, was the time when many African and Caribbean descendants moved to Harlem. Lorde's parents joined the Great Migration that started from 1910. Audre Lorde remembers her childhood as replete with diasporic sentiments because there were frustrations from her parents, especially from her mother, because the mother's wish to return to her home country after gathering a bit of money was frustrated. In this light, although Audre Lorde is better known as African American poet, we must not overlook her diasporic identity as well. Her interest in diasporic experience of the African and Caribbean descendants are evident from her visit to Grenada and prose written about the trip, as well as a great interest in African diasporic women around the world. Although not shown in the timeline, she was the contemporary of many well-known activists such as Malcolm X, Du Bois, and Martin Luther King, among many others, and witnessed their tragedies as well. Not only was she involved in the Black Civil Rights Movement, she was very active in women's rights movement as well as gay and lesbian rights. In 1978, Audre was diagnosed with breast cancer and undergoes a mastectomy. This experience of battling cancer changed her personality, creativity, and the way she is involved in the social movements. Here is the list of her works, many of which are collections of poems and some are prose. The Black Unicorn, published in 1978, is known for the poems with rich allegories and references to the African deities, as the title gives away. This is also the collection of poems that hold many lesbian love poems that are blatantly sexual and sensual. What is most well known would be Sister Outsider, which is a collection of prose and speeches. Lorde considered herself as a person apt for poetry writing, not prose or theory. However, around the time of 70s, Lorde felt the need to start expressing herself in the form of prose. Sister Outsider carries many of her famous talks, which includes uses of the erotic as the power, and the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. Lastly, Zami, a new spelling of my name, is Lorde's biomythography, which is a style of literature that is a combination of myth, history, and biography, like an epic narrative. This slide will give you a brief background of the time that she was active as a poet and an activist. In 1960s and 80s, in the post-war America, the civil rights movements for African Americans was dominated by black men, which is why many of her poems and prose write about sexism and homophobia within the black civil rights movement. This was also the time that feminists were very active and vocal about their rights, and women began to take making changes into their own hands through feminism. Consciousness raising atmosphere of that era was key to poets like Adrienne Rich and Audre Lorde to address and politically engage in women's issues, and Adrienne Rich was a very close friend of Audre Lorde. At that time, being a lesbian was not an easy task. She discovered her sexuality very early, earlier than 1952 probably when she was 18, but her public coming out took place in 1960s, and many of her friends as well as herself remember very hostile attitudes toward Audre Lorde for coming out as a lesbian, and many of the feminists and black civil rights activists did not welcome her because of her lesbian identity. But she embraced her outsider identity and she called herself the sister outsider, and she continued to be very vocal about her minority identity in her poems as well as prose. Thank you for listening.